This is my super budget Monk Flicker Striker build for the end game in PoE 2. And when I say budget, what I mean is there are no uniques that you need to go buy that cost a bazillion divine orbs to make this work. All the gear that I am wearing right now only costs 1 exalt, with the exception of me splashing out and buying a quarterstaff that has more physical damage on it. However, that's not necessary. You just put on the best quarterstaff you can find, and that's obviously the highest tier of content that you'll be able to do until you can get something a bit better. There is nothing essential that you need to go out that is really pricey to buy to make this build function right now. And I had 4 big goals with this, and I didn't think this was possible, but it is. The first goal was to be able to prep before a boss, so to be able to prep your charges, have a charge staff, and enter a boss room with everything prepped, and then do boss damage almost immediately when damage is available. You can do that with this. The second thing I wanted to do was still take advantage of the double Herald combination at the moment. If you're not familiar, you can get the Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder proccing off each other, and it's incredibly powerful. And I didn't want to lose that in a Flicker Strike build, so I wanted to maintain that. The third thing I wanted to do was obviously maintain power charges during ad clear when you're mapping, being able to proc those charges as you're going along, and you can do that with this as well. And then obviously last, I wanted to be able to do boss damage. So once you've prepped everything, you get to the boss room, able to actually dump a bell down and just flicker strike until your heart's content, and hopefully they die in a single flicker strike. They were the 4 things. There'll be chapters down below you can skip through. A lot of this video is about the tech involved with this, and then you can make it your own. I'm definitely not the best when it comes to finding the right support item, the right support gems. Really looking forward to Path of Building to like min-max a bit more. So just take that with a grain of salt. But the tech behind it, you can take and you can run with, and you can use it immediately. Okay, let's start with how you generate power charges when there are no enemies around. So you say you've cleared the map, you find the boss arena, there's no enemies around, you want to get all your power charges ready for boss damage. The way that we've been doing this is firstly getting hold of 2 unset rings. You can just purchase these. They don't have to have anything specific on them apart from obviously the grant 1 additional skill slot. That's what they will come with an unset ring. You have 2 of them. You need these extra skill slots because we are running quite a lot of skills to get all this stuff up and running. So you need to purchase 2 unset skills. If you don't know how to use the trade function, have a look at my YouTube short. I'll link it down below. That's how you buy stuff from other people. You also need in your second weaponry slot a scepter with this skill with Skeletal Warrior Minion. So you get the skill, you get Skeletal Warrior Minion. And what's going to happen is when you basically equip that secondary weapon, you're going to summon minions. And then you're going to use Profane Ritual to sacrifice those minions. Now, normally Profane Ritual only works on corpses. You basically click on a corpse and you get a power charge from it. It consumes that corpse, you get a power charge. However, there is a buff called Sacrifice. And what Sacrifice does is it makes minions also count as corpses. So now that they count as a corpse, you can click on them and you can sacrifice them, and they will give you power charges. I now have power charges. I now can put on charge staff. Oopsies. Cool. And then I just do it again. I switch back to my my scepter. I get more minions out. I then sacrifice them again with Profane Ritual, and then I have all my charges ready for boss. Now, you'll see that I'm actually getting 6 minions each time I do this. Now, 2 of them come from the weapon itself. However, you can also equip Skeletal Warrior, and this will give you another 4 skeletons that you can sacrifice to get your power charges to make it a little bit quicker, so you're not wasting time before you go into the boss room. And that is pretty, you don't need anything else on there to make this happen. However, there are a couple like bugs and things that I found was not summoning Skeletal Warriors. What you want to make sure you do is for these things, for sacrifice, you want to make sure that this buff is only active on your second weapon slot. Okay, so right here, I've ticked only on weapon slot 2. So when I actually equip my scepter, this buff will activate. And this buff only costs 60 spirit. All my other buffs I've actually turned off, and this was like causing a bug. So my Herald of Ice, Herald of Thunder, I've made sure they are only on my quarterstaff. Even though they shouldn't be allowed to be ticked on the second one, they were when I first started, and it was causing a bug. So make sure your other buffs are actually just on your quarterstaff, and then your sacrifice is just on your scepter, and that way when you actually switch, you will have enough spirit to summon the skeletons. Okay. And same with the Skeletal Warrior. Once again, you want to open up this menu. You want to make sure you're summoning as many as you can for your spirit level on your secondary weapon slot and 0 on your main weapon slot. And that's it. That's how you get power charges with no enemies around. Okay, now let's talk about the doubled Herald combo, the Herald of Ice and the Herald of Thunder, which I'm sure you've seen videos on, but maybe aren't sure of how it's actually happening, how they proc off each other. So Herald of Ice allows you to shatter frozen enemies and causes an explosion. Herald of Thunder, when you kill a shocked enemy, causes another lightning shock to come down. And you can basically get them to both trigger off each other by doing the opposite of what they should do. It seems really counterintuitive. So for ice, you want it to shock, and for the lightning, you want it to freeze, and then they basically trigger each other. So Herald of Ice, I have lightning infusion on. This is going to gain 25% damage as extra lightning damage. It's going to add lightning damage to our explosions of essentially cold damage. Now it's going to have cold and lightning. We're going to have Overcharge, which is 75% increased magnitude of shocks. It's going to make it easier to shock. And then we're going to also have Magnified Effect. Supported skills have 40% more effect on it. The only other thing I found to really help out here is to increase the quality of your Herald of Ice, because this helps with the explosion radius. So the whole idea is that you freeze an enemy, they explode. They're not only doing this cold damage, but we've added lightning to it, and we've made it easier for that damage to actually shock. And the idea being, if that damage then shocks, it's going to then trigger Herald of Thunder. And then once Herald of Thunder triggers, we're going to try to loop it back into Herald of Ice. So on Herald of Thunder, we have it doing cold damage. So cold infusion, 25% extra cold damage. Ice Bite, gain 35% of damage as cold damage for 3 seconds after freezing an enemy. But I've also been using cold penetration. That seems to work fine as well. Haven't quite decided of what I like better, so let me know if you have thoughts on it. And then glaciation, supported skills cause 50% more freeze buildup, right? So our Herald of Thunder is trying to freeze, a Herald of Ice is trying to shock, and together when that happens, they trigger each other and it pops off. Now, the way that you start this like infinite loop is with Charge Staff. So my Charge Staff is what I'm using to shock initially, and then that should proc everything else going off it. So Charge Staff, I have Persistence, so it lasts for 40% longer duration. Then Conduction, so 100% more chance to shock, and then Coursing Current. So shocking hits from supported skills have a 50% chance to also shock enemies. So we're getting Charged Staff, we're then using that to shock, and that's starting the Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice loop. And the really cool thing about the Charged Staff being the beginning of the double Herald's like infinite loop is that if you charge your staff and then flicker, you will trigger that Herald loop and things will start blowing up as you're flickering. Okay, let's talk about how you maintain charges during ad clip, because you've probably worked out by now we're not using the very commonly used, and how my last build was, resonance. We're just making normal power charges here. So how do we make power charges without this? And we've got the double Herald proccing off all the time and shattering corpses. Well, I was quite surprised with how good this worked, even though you are shattering frozen enemies, and a lot of enemies do freeze and shatter, which means you can't use that corpse because it no longer exists. A lot of enemies also just die to lightning, and their bodies will still be there. And especially if you are flickering, there are enough corpses on the ground to maintain power charges with this combination. So you use Reaper's Invocation, which is a buff, it's a trigger skill, and what you place in that is Profane Ritual. And while you are flicking, you can actually press the button for Reaper's Invocation, and this will automatically target any corpses on the floor, and Profane Ritual will then convert that to a power charge for you. I then have Impetus on, which means you gain energy faster with trigger skills, which this is what it is. and Profusion, and you have a 50% chance to get an additional charge. So as you're either flicker striking or just going along normally and you get Reaper's Invocation is up and ready, you press the button to proc it, and then you automatically target the corpse. That will give you a power charge. Now, I also supplement this with another Profane Ritual, which is equipped. I can use this on my quarterstaff. And if there's just a body there, you can just Profane Ritual it without having Reaper's Invocation up either. And between those two things, you can maintain your power charges as you're zooming along the map. You flicker, you spam Reaper's Invocation, and then if you need some extra power charges, use Profane Ritual just by clicking on corpses. Okay, the last thing to talk about is our boss damage between Flicker Strike and Tempest Bell. So you know how to charge everything now. You can enter the boss room. You basically combo, the boss with Tempest Flurry, which then allows you to drop the Tempest Bell, and then you flicker because you've already got all your power charges ready. So what you need to run on Flicker, if you missed my previous videos, is you do want to improve the quality of your Flicker Strike using your gem cutters. So this is plus 20% quality on Flicker Strike, because this will give you a chance to not remove a charge when you're using it. You combine that with Perpetual Charge, which gives you another 35% chance to not remove a charge. So every time you're dashing around and flickering, you have a 55% chance total of not consuming a charge. Close Combat's going to give you 25% more attack damage, and you're going to be right in their face. This seems counterintuitive, but I've been told this has been tested and worked. Even though Momentum is kind of the opposite of Close Combat, apparently Momentum also procs almost all the time if they're right in your face, and you get a 40% damage off your flicker, which is pretty nice because you just got to move 2 meters during a single use. And apparently your step, like your flicker animation, counts as 2 meters. I don't know if you go like 1 meter back and 1 meter forward, and that counts, but you get 40% damage off that. And then I just put Heft on here. This is going to increase the maximum damage of your physical, the top end of your physical damage by 30% as well. On Tempest Bell, I have Heavy Swing, 35% more melee physical damage. Now, my understanding is all this stuff, like even though your shockwaves are converted to like elemental damage, these like physical damage buffs will occur before the conversion. So this should just bump up your total damage, and then it's going to be converted to elemental. So that's 35% more melee physical. Hourglass is going to add a cooldown, but you're going to get 40% more damage on it, and you should be able to one-tap bosses with it. So you shouldn't need a second bell, so that's quite nice. And then Concentrated Effect is going to give us another 40% more area damage. Now, the only thing I haven't spoken about is my Tempest Flurry, and this is just kind of all the in-between pieces. The reason why I use Tempest Flurry is it's very quick. So when you're trying to do your double Herald combo, you're just basically holding down Tempest Flurry, and it's shooting out your charged staff, and that charged staff is then triggering the Herald combo. That's why I prefer Tempest Flurry over Ice Strike. And then for that reason, I put more attack speed on it as well. I also put 40% less cost. I just hold this button down and never have to think about my mana. And then I've got Crescendo on there. I'm not too sure how good this is. This is where I want to get into like Path of Building, work out like min-maxes stuff. But it's going to help with the Final Strike. The Final Strike of Tempest Flurry actually does a huge amount of damage, 424%. So just getting 2 of those seems pretty nice. And Lightning Mastery, going to +1 to lightning skills. So it's going to go up a level as well. That is all the tech that's kind of involved. Go off and be free and start flickering. The only thing I haven't spoken about that's in my build is Wind Dancer, a very good defensive buff to have on. I don't know if these are the best supports to have on. I've got Lockdown, a Pin, and Wind Wave, but I kind of want to review this again as well. And we probably should have a quick look at our passive skill tree. Okay, let's have a look at our passive skill tree. There's nothing crazy in here. As you can see, this does not look very optimized, and everything still works. I would say the main things that you need to prioritize is obviously power charges. Punch in power charge up the top. I'm going to try and make this so you don't need to respec that much. Pump a power charge and see which areas are glowing. See, there's some power charges here. You want to find the nodes that have +1 to power charge and equip them so you get additional power charges. The other thing to note is a flicker can be so dangerous and put you in really gnarly situations. So I did find I had to work my way to this ascendancy point to get some, some defensive layers on my monk. So I wasn't just getting absolutely slammed when I came out of a flicker strike. I also played around with just increasing shock effect here, having shock effect and I am thunder for extra lightning damage to help proc that double herald a bit quicker. And this trigger spell would definitely help with the build too when I get my next ascendancy points. On top of that, I think in general, making your way over to the quarterstaff tree because it's got lots of good perks here too. And I think probably for the double herald, this would be really important as well, making your way over here. But apart from that, I think you have quite free reign in what you select just to get this build going. I wouldn't neglect evasion and energy shields wherever you can find them. Put them on as much as you need. If you keep dying, try to prioritize getting some energy and evasion. I find that as soon as I dipped into both energy and evasion, my survivability went up a lot. And that is it. Go forth and carry the good name of Flicker. If you'd like to support the channel and cannot think of a comment, leave the word Flicker down below. Hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it helps you out. And we'll see you next time. This is Myelin Games. Peace.